All right, I believe I'm live and I'm online and I'm talking and hello everybody. So today I'm going to continue on this process of the coronavirus, but I also speak about the causal reality of it, yeah, and then how to heal that causal reality of it. And it's not really about me telling people you've got to behave a certain way or you've got to change certain habits or you got to do certain things. It's abilities that develop inside of people, yeah, and they come with compassion, yeah, and the influence of that compassion is an awakening aspect, an attribute, yeah, that wakes up in people, and it takes a while for that to happen. But when it happens, uh, the things that come in is the ability to be sensitive to communication and compassion and empathy. Yeah? And on a linear side, you would think, well, then that's like education or being a doctor or some kind of thing that makes sense, just an intellectual thing. But esoterically, energetically, Buddhist oriented, reality is that what wakes up is bodhisattva, yeah, and you don't know what bodhisattva is, but bodhisattva is inside of everything, every atom inside of it, locked in at the very center point of the atom is Buddha. Yeah, Buddha's consciousness, Buddha's impression, but mainly bodhisattva, yeah, which is an element of Buddha's nature. Yeah, and the difficulty is that we're humanity and animals and the kingdoms of water and the kingdoms of vegetables and all of these different kingdoms are all affected simultaneously with hate and fear and jealousy and enviousness and separation. And it leads us to prejudice, a really low-minded way of thinking. Oh, you can't think, you can't even communicate. You're dysfunctional. Your race has these limitations. Your sexual orientation has these limitations. All these things are just part of our nature. It's part of our nature. Yeah. So I'm not here to orient people to understand that part of it. Yeah. I'm here to radiate that light inside of every atom. So I radiate into very few people, and when it does take, it takes a lot of incarnations, and then once those incarnations are in a state of fluidity and growth, then emanations, yeah, come out, which are disciples. Yeah, they started off as average human beings in lower nature and in normal nature, yeah, except that they really weren't under the influence of God. They were here, but by the grace of God, yeah. And what we don't know is that we pretty darn lucky to be in a human body, that we're not a jackass or a frog, yeah, or a turtle, yeah. And that's like, oh, that's Twilight Zone, that's Star Trek, that's that's kind of fantasy kind of shit. But I'm telling you, from where I'm sitting and watching all of you incarnate and reincarnate, and my relationship to all these kingdoms, I know that human beings incarnate either down or up. You don't just go away, you don't just go off to hell, you don't just go off to heaven, yeah. You reincarnate, but when you reincarnate, do you reincarnate at a lower level? Yeah, that means, dog, cat, rat, the species, yeah, of the character, more like the character you were when you were last incarnated, yeah. And because it's all adapting to lower nature, then it truly is going to lower nature. And you're facilitating the beast. Our beastly nature. Our fearful, predator, competitive nature. And that nature is a left-hand spin. It takes us down, and we do reincarnate, but we are on a wheel. It's almost like, you'd be lucky, if in this next life you're going to show up as a human being. Because there's just so many souls that are manifested as soulful opportunity. And people are incarnated and people disincarnate. But the influence of incarnation has a stronger point of downward spiral. And so in the hierarchy, or in the initiations of awakening, people awaken to Bodhisattva. When they awaken to Bodhisattva, they get to a level in which they have a responsibility, an ability to respond. And that means they're going to respond to the next kingdom below them, because we're in a hierarchy. And you're not in a hierarchy of human beings, you're more in a hierarchy of you've behaved. And if you behave, then you have pretty good karma to the kingdom below you, the animal kingdom and the vegetable kingdom, and your harm and all those things are of such good nature that you would be really kind and sweet and considerate and natural to the kingdom below you. And that would lead to an outcome. It would save the kingdom below you. The kingdom below you would immediately be risen up to the ability to communicate, only because you are an initiate. Now everybody can have a pet, and no pet really communicates. They're just like on a leash, and they foster this sixth ray connection. And there always is training and communication going on, but the mind doesn't really get it. The process of what we're doing and how we're doing it is mainly to help the animal communicate, and find out its needs and talk with it, become a friend. It becomes oriented as a group or as a field of relationships. Not just, I'm your pet, but field of relationships. It needs those fields of relationship, and so we come to find out that every animal is here for a purpose, and yet we don't know what it is. We think this one does that, this one does this, but we have no idea that if we were to understand a dog, and let a dog do what it's supposed to do, which is sniff, smell things out, its nasal passages and all the things that goes on there, it saves it saves others, it's great for hunting, it's great for everything, But the one thing that it's really great for is sniffing out disease and illness, even coronavirus, if it was trained to do so, But we have to relate to these animals as intellectually intelligent, soulful, sentient beings that have a job. And you have to let them know you have a job, And they get that in their head, and they orient themselves. And it becomes part of their nature, service. And it is the purpose of the incarnation of the animal, is to be of service. And whether you're a group of monkeys in the forest and doing what you're doing, if you watch them, the ones that live well are the ones that are in service and cooperate and have fun and do all this stuff. And the ones that are aggressive and pulling off bad nature and bad relationships, hardly anyone is surviving. So it's really about nature and whether or not we're in a clearer, more empathetic, compassionate nature. So all the animals are basically by nature empathetic and compassionate. By nature, except that they have never built a relationship to this thing called the human being. It's so far, because in their mind, their nature, they think clearly. Yeah, it is what it is, truth. That's the animal's perspective. If something is going to hurt them, they know that. They feel that. They do all these kind of things in order to protect themselves. It's nature. Yeah. But when they come across a human being, and if you learn to communicate with animals, you'll find that the animals have a very direct image of human beings, and either they're stupid, that's what the animal says, they're stupid. Yeah? That's what the sign language gorilla said after learning 2,000 communication words. It gave a clear impression of, I'm a gorilla, I'm nature, yeah? You're stupid. Yeah? No matter how nice they were and everything, they were still human and they were still stupid. Because they're just not using what comes natural, which is a whole brain. Yeah? Because of the bias and the superstition and all the different things we go through, we get so narrow-minded. We lose context of people around us, everything, because we got a little bitty brain. Compared to all the other animals out there who are using their little bitty brains, yeah? Take an elephant, its brain is so small compared to a human being, but its memory, its cognitive ability, its abilities, for so much, is incredible because it uses its whole brain. Yeah? So most animals use their whole brain, except for the human being. And that means that it's the human being, even though it thinks it's the one that communicates, it's the one that picks up tools and makes things and all that stuff, according to the animal, that's really not true. They don't do anything. They just make messes, and they're stupid. Yeah? Their whole behavior, stupid. Yeah? Yeah? Their reaction to things, so uncomfortable. So unnatural. Try getting near one. Oh, whoa. I don't know. Whether you're a horse or a cat or a dog, all their senses immediately tell them it's not wise to get that close to a human being. Because we need to reach Bodhisattva, so we learn to become a universal brother or sister with animals and humans. And it's not like we need to have pets. We need to have love and compassion. Yeah. So that has happened here on Earth. Yeah. We have history of events where animals have crossed over from being just an ignorant animal that is skitty and can't be trusted, and are just low-life animals. Yeah. To animals that actually become your very closest friend, not a pet friend, but one that thinks for itself, gets up and does something to help out, pick up a box, carries it. A bear, did that, A gorilla learned sign language, 200 different words, A horse learns to read and write and spell, I mean really spell. Went to a spelling bee with 6th graders and won. The daughter of our president, Roosevelt's daughter, walked in, sat in the front stage, and the horse was asked to spell the entire name. 3 different names. Spell them all. The horse spelled them faster than the kids. Isn't that amazing? I mean, come on, that ought to blow your mind. And there's only one reason why that happened. I'm going to show you because I got video on all 3 of them. And there's one thing that happened that's different than that amongst all reasons as to why animals turn out like this. It's because the person that found them, person that found them treated in a certain way, and in their own mind, in their heart, in the state of nature that they were in as an individual, that connection happened between them and an animal. One was a slave, the others were military people, yeah, who are down and out in the middle of the military, yeah. Another one is an ape that is born in America, in California, and is able to be raised for the first time in captivity, yeah. So it learns sign language at 1 year old and goes on from there, you know. So these interpersonal relationships start building. We get to scientifically do research on these things. I was involved in Coco. Yeah, Coco is a gorilla. I was involved in getting Coco to learn sign language. We believed that we were psychologists, and the lady who took over at Stanford became the one person who was responsible for teaching sign language to Coco. Yeah, and it worked. After a year and a half, Coco was doing sign language for food, for communication, yeah, for recognizing people and objects, yeah. That was crazy, you know, the first 200 words, I think, in the first year and a half, yeah. Yeah, and then it just kept growing to 2,000 words, and breaking them down into sentences, like, you know, at least 5 words combined together to, you know, get a direction on something, yeah. So let me show you Coco.
Baby.
With a sign language vocabulary of more than 1,000 words and the ability to understand thousands more,
Coco love, good.
Coco, the western lowland gorilla, was a scientific marvel and source of wonder for decades. Coco, who died this week at the age of 46, captured the world's attention not just because of her ability to communicate, but for her display of human-like emotions and empathy.
Oh, they're crying. They are crying on the movie.
Coco was born in captivity in 1971 at the San Francisco Zoo and began learning sign language at the age of 1 from Dr. Penny Patterson as part of a Stanford research project. She became a sensation back in 1978 as the subject of a National Geographic cover story. The cover, a picture Coco took of herself in a mirror. Coco would again grace the magazine's cover in 1985. This time, it showed the gentle giant cradling her pet kitten, All Ball.
Coco rhymed a name for her new kitten.
When the beloved feline died, Coco was visibly upset.
Coco, All Ball, hit by a car.
And seemed to understand the concept of death. Over her lifetime, Coco also learned how to paint, play wind instruments, and loved watching movies. Being a celebrity also meant Coco got to bond with other notable names, stars such as Mr. Rogers.
Can you teach me how to do that? Oh.
Betty White.
Oh, thank you, darling. I appreciate that very much.
And even the late Robin Williams. The two hit it off instantly and famously formed a close friendship.
Yeah, when Robin Williams died, they went to Coco and told Coco, and Coco just totally started crying, yeah, and saying how sad, you know. And so it took about 3 months for Coco to come out of that. Yeah, it was really depressing for Coco. Yeah. So now I'm going to show you some bear. Yeah. A bear that, a very cool bear. Every animal, there isn't an animal that doesn't have a direct relationship to human, because we reincarnate. Yeah. But if we don't understand reincarnation and get on this, you know, to what I'm saying, you know, when you leave this body, and you may end up as whatever, you know, I'm trying to teach you to appreciate where you're at, you know, stay calm, orient yourself, yeah, follow through, because you got all the nature, you know everything, you got it all. There's nothing, you're not going to think about, oh shit, you know, I used to be Jimmy. You know, why aren't I human anymore? You know, none of that shit comes up. You're alive, you're doing what you're doing, everything becomes life. You're in the tree of life again, yeah? So it's just a continuation. But everything has a soul. And we need to connect this, because this life as an animal is 7 years, 6 months, or 20 years usually tops, So that's a very short cycle of time to get your shit together. Learn to have some strength, some courage, swim around, run the forest, do whatever you're going to do as the animal, and live it, or be the human being. But through the teaching, you become aware of the wholeness of our situation, and that we need to have a way of no prejudice. We have to have a way of no jealousy. We have to have a way of how we're responding, because we have to have the ability to respond. That's our nature. If we don't have the ability to respond and we're shut off from responding, then all our force that we're given to be alive with doesn't go outside of ourselves. It stays in us, and that is not what God put us here for. God put us here in order for us to be appreciative of the life we're in, and that radiates light out. That brings everything into a state of balance. So it's the animal kingdom that makes that difference. So it's not a matter of whether or not we're vegetarian or whether or not, we have pets or anything, but it's whether or not we come to relate to animals in a different way, as sentient beings, and even further than that, that maybe the mountain is a sentient being, maybe the tree is a sentient being, maybe the little ladybug is a sentient being, and if you learn to communicate, they will treat you as though you're listening. You'll never know. But there's no way we can, like in Kwai Kane, like blind standing there, and I go, how is it you don't hear the grasshopper at your feet? And the kid goes, what the shit? How can you know there's a grasshopper at my feet? Well, how is it that you don't know? And that's that sense. Everybody has this telepathic, intuitive nature, but you got to build it, because if your nature is to respond in certain ways that are so self-centered, then the nature you're thinking you're getting, because you might be in a religion or you might be in a belief system, the nature you think you're getting isn't there yet. It's not. That's why the world is the way it is. That's why we got a Trump. That's why we don't know if we're going to vote him out. That's why we don't know, anything is real, because we're not at a place to where we're in bodhisattva, to where our nature of response is Buddha nature, bodhisattva, which is a very different thing than, an emotional response. Bodhisattva response is a lot of happiness, immediate. A lot of joy, immediate, because the inner influence, like if you're meeting an animal, what's going to freak this animal out is your nervousness. Even the subtlest nervousness will freak the animal out. So the more you love the animal, the more you trust the animal. The more your heart is open, the more there's nothing to fear. But due to the fact that the heart might not be open, your fear is happening because you're generating a fearful situation, and you're becoming aware of it, and it's a good thing because you don't want to bring that out. So you step back from the animal. You can feel the energy; it's starting to stir up. He's nervous. It's not like right. It's not right. So you got to build a relationship. And it's that how we respond is how long it takes to build that relationship. Because there's so many people who train with whips, and harsh words. Like you got to tell them, sit back, get over here, and no animal needs to hear that. They will immediately respond by the image in your head, without the word. You think, come on, low voice, no a high voice thinking that it can't hear you, Doesn't take much. And almost any animal can hear. They can hear so much better than you. Yeah, but the main thing that they're hearing is the intuition and the telepathy, and whether or not you're going to be a gentle, happy person. You know, and that goes over to humans and everybody else. If that nature is not there, then you're making everything unsettled. You know, and it's not your fault. It's just that it takes a position of effort to calm that nature down, so that your spontaneous reaction to this hellfire world, you know, isn't a bunch of fear and quick response and anger and you know all this kind of stuff. Yeah, you know, so teaching you this, letting you know this, you know, is how we help with animals, but it's also how we help with people. But you're going to find that in your awakening of Buddha nature, your relationship to each other, you know, is going to be the very thing that is the same thing I'm showing you in these animals. When someone gets so nice and they get the opportunity of getting a little baby gorilla or a little baby bear or a brand new horse, you know, it's never met anybody, and it's kind of like freaking retarded, you know, can hardly stand, you know, and you turn it into the smartest animal on the planet. And it gets a museum and named after it and all that kind of stuff, yeah? But it started off not so well, you know? The gorilla started off without a mother or a father, and it couldn't have any children. Super bad scenario, yeah? But only because of the love connection, it gave a whole grounded reality, yeah? And whether you're an animal or you're a human, yeah, that's our opportunity. Our opportunity is that if we're kind, you know, we build this ladder, yeah, and what comes of it is a building block for even an animal to receive what it is you have inside of you, your way of thinking, your way of figuring something out. It is shared, yeah. That's what happens. That's bodhisattva quality, because we're connected, and all of a sudden the animal starts thinking like you. And it's already in the animal, but you're sponsoring the animal because you're its new friend, and you have these certain abilities that now are shared with the animal. Yeah. So the horse has the ability of its trainer. Yeah. And all the people around the bear gets the ability of all the people around the bear. Yeah. Yeah. And the monkey gets the ability of the lady who's a sign language and psychologist. The ape turns into a psychologist. Yeah. And loves little kittens and people and communicates and says, you're an idiot. You know? Totally able to distinguish. But it's getting these characteristics, these abilities that are shared back and forth. And that's how we all do this. You know, if we take little children or we take anybody and we relate to them without judgment, without jealousy, without enviousness, we're sponsoring a field of nature for them to grow in. Yeah? And whether you're an animal or a human. Yeah? So if we have all these problems in the world, it's because of the foundation of nature that people grew in. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we all end up with kind of short-sighted, limited abilities. Yeah. Because we need bodhisattva. We need it to pull it out of us. And that's what, in Buddha nature, in Buddha teaching, the transmission is what pulls it and what makes it happen. Yeah. So that, in effect, you know, taking that and doing it with animals, bears, horses. Let me show you this one with a horse or the bear. And part of the story is that they were responsible for getting supplies to people. Yeah, that was their thing, and during the military process in the war, they were transferred to artillery. So it was their responsibility to get ammunition, to the guys who were shooting, and so they had a whole truck full of big bullets that the boxes would weigh over 100 pounds. So the truck had to park pretty far away from where they had to get to everybody, and they had to get to people in different ditches, so it was very difficult to carry these 100-pound boxes one at a time, and they weren't going to make it. They were going to lose. They weren't able to fulfill, what they needed to shoot, because the bullets didn't get there fast enough. And the bear, which was told to stay back, and it just freaked out, and it ran to where the boxes were at, grabbed a box, stood up, and ran with that box to the next location, and then ran back, grabbed another box, and did it 5 to 10 times faster than anybody would have done it. So if it hadn't been for the bear, they would have lost. A lot of people would have died. So that's the real story behind it. He got a medal. He was brought up to corporal, and to everybody he was a hero. That's nice. Okay, so now there's a little story about a horse. Now, everybody in America, in the late 1800s to the very beginning of the 1900s, this horse was existing and doing some fabulous things and was able to read and write. Right, can you imagine? It wrote its own name, Jimmy. Jimmy. No kidding, wrote its own name. That's impossible, but it did it. And it took letters from a board and placed them in sequence in right order, and did whatever it was that he was supposed to spell. Every time right. Even take money out of a cash register. You buy something, say, I have 2 apples and 4 oranges and a banana, here's $50. And it would get change. That's crazy. That's crazy. Really did that, yeah. So let's watch that.
Taken out of its misery. He doesn't do that. He looks in the eyes of that horse, and what he sees is something intelligent. And he already had spent his life training horses and being around horses with kindness and patience and intelligence. As he was raised, he believed in that for every sentient being. And he takes this horse and he begins to work with this horse, Jim Key. Talk to him. Sleeps in the stable with Jim Key. Turns out, for the rest of his life and Jim Key's life, this story is going to get unbelievable. He trains him for 3 or 4 years, and he begins to see real signs of intelligence out of Jim. He finds that he can teach Jim fetch, lie down, play dead, like a dog. He also finds that Jim seems to be very interested in the other animals, He comes over and he sniffs them. He's kind to them in a way that Bill feels is very unusual. So when he's trained him in a number of these different skits, he takes him on the road with one of Bill's big money-making products, Keystone liniment oil. At that time, liniment oil and other oils was sold by people who went on the road, kind of circuses on the road. And Bill was very successful with Keystone, but about to become hugely more successful selling Keystone using Jim Key. So he's on the road with the Keystone liniment oil, and here is a quote from a newspaper about someone who saw Jim and Bill during this Keystone liniment tour. Crowds gathered, and Dr. Key would slip Jim Key a piece of sugar and say, "Now, Jim, you's a powerful smart horse, I know, but what is your politics? Is it Republican?" Jim took a look of disgust and shakes his head, "No." "Are you a prohibitionist?" "No." "Are you a populist?" "No." "Are you a socialist?" "No." The horse was unmoved. "Are you a Democrat?" The horse's expression changes. He snickered and made various noises. The audience bursts into laughter. With this encouragement, Jim grasped a piece of chalk in his mouth and scrawls "Jim" on the blackboard, made change from a cash register, spelled the name of a man in the audience by selecting the letters from a rack. On the road, Jim does all kinds of tricks that people could not believe. Now think about this. This was the time when the horse was a part of the family, but people did not think of the horse as intelligent. You kind of treated horses sort of like dumb animals, skittish, dumb. They were like, well, you can't say cars, although you treat your car kind of the same way, but it was kind of like that. Everybody had them, but nobody thought of them like this horse was behaving. And Jim becomes famous with Bill. Keystone liniment takes off, but he also begins to perform in Negro exhibitions, they called them. At these exhibitions, people show up, and Jim is in the front of the stage, and Bill is on the side, and he says to the audience things, he says to the horse things, and the horse does them. I'm going to tell you some of those things in a minute, but picture now it's 1897, and he's performing somewhere in the South, and a great New York circus guy, Albert Rogers, hears about Jim Key and Bill Key and goes down and tries to buy Jim Key. $10,000, $20,000. Bill won't even consider it. He sleeps with the horse every night. And he says, "Of course I won't sell him." So Albert says, "Well, can we work together and form an act where you and Jim perform in front of audiences? I think we can make a lot of money." And they do. And everywhere they perform, they are an amazing hit. Imagine this. He reads and spells using his mouth. He can count from 1 to 25 and up to $1, really, and he can make change. He can play the organ with his mouth. Just a few notes to show that he understands the organ. He can tell time. If you ask him, "What is the time now?" he moves the clock around to the proper time. And he can use a phone. He can actually pull the little numbers down on the old-time telephones. Do you believe all of this? Well, here's one of the things that happened. By the way, they ended up making several $1 million before the story I'm about to tell you, which is what happens in 1904, a critical moment in their career. But everybody is talking about this horse. Front page news in newspapers around the country. He's going to meet President McKinley, spent a few hours with him, and some Harvard guys get suspicious. So a paper asks the Harvard guys to investigate, and they do a real test. They put Bill in the back of the room, they see whether there's any signals between them, and they conclude the horse is for real. Here's a quote I love. So this is about 1903. While performing in Cincinnati, this is in a newspaper, while performing in Cincinnati, a soiled towel by mistake was put in Jim Key's trunk, and Jim, when he took it out, threw it on the floor and shook his head as if to say, "I can't stand this." The towel was used to wipe Jim's mouth after he took a coin out of a glass of water, which people felt was impossible at the time. This created great amusement among the audience, and one lady, Mrs. C. Long, bought Jim 6 beautiful fringe towels on which she had sewn his name. And one of the things that's important about this is that Bill continues to treat Jim with his beautiful kindness and sweetness. And the American Humane Society, which exists at that time, takes notice. George Ansell, the head of it, he says, "Hey, could I connect with you And maybe we could get kids to really pay attention to treat animals and horses in a way that they've never been treated before. And they start a relationship, beautiful Jim Key and the American Humane Society. So now we come to the high point of the story. 1904, the St. Louis World's Fair. There is a building called the Jim Key Pavilion. Why? Because he'd been getting audiences of 10,000 a night, 15,000 a night, and at the World's Fair, 22,000 people paid money to see Jim a night. And one night, Allison Longworth Roosevelt comes, the daughter of the president, President Roosevelt. And she steps into the hall and everyone, oh, it's Allison. And she goes right to the front and she sits down. And it just so happens that the St. Louis school system has sent a bunch of 6th grade kids, also in the front row, to have a spelling bee competition against Jim Key. And one of the words that comes up is Allison Longworth Roosevelt. And Jim Key, the horse, spells Allison Longworth Roosevelt, as well as McKinley, and wins the spelling competition. Not that he's better than these best of kids, but he's as fast. So they conclude he has the spelling capability of a 6th grade student. It's national news. It's major stuff. He's bigger than any actor or athlete at the time, really. He's in every newspaper. He's booming. There's a song written about him. There are all kinds of advertisers who want to do advertising with him, obviously horse-related things, but also Pullman Car Company, the great railroad car company, makes a special car for Jim and for Bill, who sleeps with him in that car, and for his dog, Monk. So Monk is with Jim all the time, and from the time they connect, every single performance also has Monk in it, and Jim is also kind to Monk. He bends over so Monk can jump up on his back and stuff like that. It's just beautiful. There's a play written about Jim Key in which he plays a role, and the American Humane Society begins to do amazing things. It actually produces a button that honors Jim, and it produces a medal, and 2 million children sign this pledge, the Mercy Pledge. The pledge says, I promise to be kind to animals and to all sentient beings. And that was signed by 2 million kids. There's a special ambulance corps for animals, which honors Jim. He's very, very famous. He dies in 1909, and he's got a beautiful cemetery stone at the place where Bill owned land. And Bill dies also with a stone that honors beautiful Jim Key. So what happened to this story? My colleague writes the book, Beautiful Jim Key. It becomes a bestseller.
So that's a pretty famous horse, and he died in 1908, and so from 1900 on, he became so famous, and the Humane Society began making these little medals that if you join this club, and you actually go there to meet him, see him, witness it, be taught by it, that these are abilities and change your way of thinking about animals, that you get this certificate, a little medal stating that, you're going to be harmless to all sentient beings and treat animals and all things, all sentient beings kind of thing. So it's really cool. And this happened to a couple million people. So a couple million people in your previous life, as children. So those children then grow up. By 1950, 1960, they're the mothers and fathers of the new group that comes out in the 50s. And there's a lot going on at that time. Einstein and other people are facilitating the wake up, and Ford is facilitating the movement, preparing for the big coming of enormous numbers of people that have this nature. Hippies. They have this nature by the millions. And they just clamor in, and they just have detachment because they have nature. And they're not upset. They're not angry. They just want to be free. And they want to communicate in nature. They want to be more part of nature. They become nature children. Yeah, and they're everything that the animals are looking for. Yeah, everything. And from that point on, all of us became environmentally conscious and started taking care of this planet better and started eating better and thinking better with empathy and compassion. All of us. Yeah. So there's been a lot of training. There's been a lot going on to help people break the norm, and become aware of their own higher sentient, loving qualities, and not just in themselves as human beings, but to recognize those things in an animal. That really. You got to burn up a whole lot of jealousy, a whole lot of enviousness, because all your prejudice and delusions and all that is part of that jealousy and enviousness. So when these things come up, I could show you another one, a lady who, extremely compassionate lady that worked with elephants and rhinos. And she spent her time when she was in her 30s as a doctor working with these elephants, where all of them are being slaughtered for their tusks, and the babies are left behind, and big ones with tusks are being killed. So there are thousands of babies that don't have parents, and they have no way of surviving because they don't have their milk, and they can't drink milk from other sources, and they really can't eat regular food yet. So this is a real tragedy, especially in her heart. So she works and works and works and works and works to find a formula. Goes to Africa, lives there with the elephants. They bring them all to her, and hundreds of them, And so she's working out formula and find out that it is coconut oil and natural mother's milk combined together, and fed that to these elephants, and they grew from it. So that took a while for her to get past, what all the things, proteins and different kinds of liquids and, whatever you can, and then have to go, well, it must be nature that we're missing here. We're not going to get it out of an elephant, and we can't be taking it out of animals to give it to them because they won't take cow milk. So it moved toward mothers giving milk for all these elephants, So this lady does this, and she grows old, and she gets into her 70s, and she's still doing it, and she's helping rhinos, and she's helping the elephants. And one day when she's like old, and she's there at the reserve, and all of a sudden, hundreds of elephants appear, and they're all in a long line coming in the direction of that place. And they all came to give her a hug. Each one of them came, walked right up to her, gave her a hug, and then the next one came, gave her a hug. Every single one of them gave her a hug. And it wasn't long after that she left her body. So that's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, elephants are a great thing. We want to bridge. It's not about being vegetarian. It's about being compassionate. It's about being responsible, responding, She didn't jump into, I got to be vegetarian in order to save these elephants. No, I got to make sense of this, and I got to figure out how to save these elephants and make a point of people knowing that this is a problem, and then get people to stop killing the elephants, which she did. It put an enormous amount of pressure on bringing in different types of training into Africa, so that there was an African reserve team that literally stopped the encroachment of Africa for taking of those horns. And it's mainly because of her raising compassion and understanding that, look, this is what's left over. This is horrifying. It's not just terrible. The elephants died, but the babies are left behind, So that was pretty cool. I'll show you that one. There's a film on that, so it's always great to see the films. You get to see the elephants and the lady and the whole bit. So here in Shambhala, the influence of bridging this process between humanity and the animals and all of nature is my job. That's what I do. And I can't do it by writing books, and I can't do it by putting things into a bunch of teachings and telling people you got to do these certain things. But if I do certain things, if I do things like I build Shambhala, yeah, and I add in it animals that are the holiest animals, they are here, though, it just happens to be the holiest animals are hanging out here in Shambhala. Well, I brought them here, but we have yaks, we have llamas, we have alpacas, we have a cow, we have chickens, we have, beautiful horses, 2 really incredible horses, yeah. And, just everything that is here, the influence of these animals, if you look at this, this little animal here, we got a yak and our nice little llama, and we got a couple more yaks or llamas. And lots of yaks, yeah. So the influence of giving, caring, sharing, yeah. It's one thing to buy a big piece of land, put your house on it, yeah. But it's another thing to apply, for the land to be raised up, yeah. It's not really what you think, it's not ownership. What goes on here is there's no ownership. I have everything in a trust of a church. So the influence of this church, the qualities behind what we're doing, is mainly the process of planetary healing. And it's a difficult one to bring planetary healing into effect. Let me show you. Here's a little. This is Shambhala. So imagine building something like this. And you really don't have a lot of sponsors. You don't have any books or anybody or anything going out saying this is going on, give these people a hand, things like that. But we keep pulling it off and putting it together, and it runs. It's functioning. And the influence of this monastery and the influence of these animals that live here, the influence of caretaking and being an animal caretaker and an animal householder, and it's not the activity of doing that makes it's not merit. It's not about merit, because I'm doing this because it's a science, it's causal. How do you heal it? You heal the influence that the bridge is at, the animal and the human. So I have some very holy animals here that have a natural spiritual affinity to spirituality. Like peacocks. They're well known for being really spiritual. And cow, pretty spiritual. Even chickens. If you study Maitreya, he has a chicken on his head. Why? Figure it out. But there is. And all the influences of the animal caretaker reality is about reincarnation. The fellowship of reincarnation. It's not about this specialness of being a human being. It's about the reality of the chance of being a human being isn't that high. There's a lot more animals than there are humans, and they have shorter lives than the human does. So those lives happen quite often. And the opportunity process comes and goes. It moves. It's filtered. There's no control over this thing as to how reincarnation facilitates itself. So you may experience, when you reincarnate, you may have a big lag of time between incarnations. You know, just, oh wow, you know, it doesn't feel like I've been here for very long. Well, there's a good chance you were trotting down a hillside as a goat, you know, or as a donkey, and then, you know, a goat again, you know, and then a donkey again, and then a sheep, and then, you know, and then it just kind of goes on, yeah, because you need to live, yeah, and we're living in order to learn how to be with each other, yeah, not to be afraid of each other, but to be with each other, yeah. So there's inside of nature, there's an instinct of right relationship, you know. There's this in animals. There's a pretty interesting relationship as to instinctually, intuitively figuring out who you're going to mate with. Yeah, and in many animals, that is a one-time thing. Yeah, that you find one mate and that's it, and that's a lot of animals. Yeah, have that instinct. Yeah, and high, you know, elephants, seals. Yeah, all kinds of animals have instincts that are not natural in human nature. Yeah, but they are inside of the animal kingdom. Yeah. So we reincarnate, but the ability to foster bringing, you know, compassion and empathy and higher mind into the world is difficult when the world has spent a lot of time destroying nature, yeah, and putting everybody or everything in stress, and you know, and inhibiting Native Americans from being caretakers that they were for thousands of years, yeah, and that would be our bridge between peace and not peace. You know, it would be very strong inherited nature, yeah, that understands the animal and the rock and the spirit, yeah, and helps everything flow because they see that they are Bear Clan, they see that they are the Eagle Clan, they see that they are clans, but they're clans out of the animal kingdom, you know, so there's no separation, you know, between the animal and the human in the nature of the Native American, yeah. They really do see themselves taking incarnation as another animal. Not a problem, yeah, and it just is the way it works, yeah, and so they have an enormous. This could be my uncle over here, you know, that bear, you know, any of it, you know. The asshole snake is probably my aunt, yeah, just like my aunt, yeah, and all these nature spirits, they work within things, yeah, and the evil, the negativity, and everything that's up here in this kingdom has relationships of similarities in the animal kingdom. So as a Native American, we know if we stay in this midpoint, we get vision and we get energy and we get understanding by blending these two places. Yeah, and we're on a quest. We're not here, we're not there. We're inside a quest between the animal nature and the human nature. Yeah, so it's that it makes everything right. It keeps us from doing harm to the lakes, to the streams, to life, and ownership of land, and all those things don't enter our way of being, our way of thinking. Yeah, that's nature. Yeah, and we've completely eliminated that opportunity, that energy that could be making things better. Yeah, so I built this in order to. I'm American Indian, so that's a goodie, yeah. And then I build this, and it's fostering that nation, the ancient Native American nation, yeah, and which the American nation, all the United States, is based on the foundation of the Native American nation, yeah. All of our states, everything is based on that. So these pujas and all of this is to recapitulate us in the fact that Americans, by the numbers that we are a majority of reincarnated Native Americans, yeah, by the numbers that we are, simply because we don't go away, yeah, and we're not going to end up in Slavica or some other place, and if we do, we'll come right back here, yeah, and we because 200 million people, just don't go disappearing off the planet of the Earth and leave it down to 1 million people. Yeah, so it's in the area of reincarnation, and the United States is, if we move to our recapitulation of past lives and have that energy come back into us, which is one of the reasons why I'm helping to foster the Native Americans right now, and getting them to gain strength and courage and see me, know me, and receive from me so that they can stand strong and know that they're not dissolving and they're not under attack. They are without the understanding of communication. Yeah, the influence of communication is gone. Yeah, so everything that goes on with a Native American is a lie, and it could be changed at any given moment, because that's the nature, the lower nature. Yeah, and it governs everything. So inside of them, and which is inside of everybody else who comes to America, the majority of Americans are reincarnated Native Americans, building this process. And if people start meditating and using the tools, we have an enormous, many future lives of recapitulating thousands and thousands and thousands of years of lives with loved ones and with animals and with the kingdoms of all of America, that we want to be in. So all of that comes back into the planet. It's not just into us to give us back the nature of who we are, but it actually fosters the nature of America and the hidden elemental qualities of spirituality here. It's not a well-known fact that this is a highly spiritual ground, but this is the foundation ground where the Great Pyramid idea came from. It's from this nation, that all of it, all around the world, all those things about Great Pyramids and everything, all are fostered from the ancient times of America. So when we recapitulate, it's done by the influence of the science of the soul, and hardly anybody knows what science soul is. So I do the invocations and evocations, and one of them that I do, it's called the Om Heaven on Earth. And it's set up because when I begin doing the Om, when I begin putting myself out as Jesus Christ again, and then the next stage is that I offer myself as a meditator, a yogi, and then I offer people to meditate with me. And that means that now there's a master. And even though you have no way of recognizing any of these words and put it all together in any way, shape, or form, but it is a process. It's an externalization process. So through the invocation, inside the invocation is a science, and it's the science of the soul. And there are very specific things that have to be invoked in people, specifically, in order to bring about the healing of the causal problem. And the causal problem is the nature. One nature is one way and another nature is another way. And how do you get people to awaken bodhisattva? So this puja is my awakener for bodhisattva. So if you listen to it very closely, it will help you gain the ability to save the world. Save the world. And you start off by saving children and animals. Not by being vegetarian and not by not being cannibal, I'm not going to eat children or like that, and a satanic, all those kind of things that go on. Those are not the things that we're working to stop. They happen, but that's not the process. The main thing is the awakening of the angel within. By awakening that angel within, there's a nature that comes with that, and that instills the change that comes out of what it is that we're doing. No intellectual thing. That way, there is no Just no emotional response. Yeah? If the teaching is on a very specific note and it hits a very specific point, yeah, then it goes into that one place that allows you to learn to respond. And it gives you the ability to respond that actually has the ability to be the healer. Yeah? And we don't know how to be a healer yet. Yeah? Because we don't know what we're healing. Yeah? We want to heal the earth. We want to keep things from happening. We don't want big volcanoes. We don't want a nuclear war. We'd rather have it be happy, all these all these kind of good things, yeah? But the main things that we need is nature. Yeah? And we don't know what nature is. And it's not Mother Nature or anything like that, but it's the nature that comes with the spirit. And it has laws in it, and it keeps us from having any of these other things come around. Yeah? And it opens up a door that is our healing abilities. And it brings us into different layers. Every year we wake up with more layers and layers of ability to reach outside of ourself and receive the blessings of things outside of ourselves. Yeah, where before it was always just spinning this way, and also frustrated, and you can't really get outside your astral body. You'd only get to your astral body. Yeah, but in these invocations, it's to destroy your astral body. Literally, just destroy it. Yeah, because there is a heart inside that cares about children. Yeah, and if that can be touched and awakened, and at the same time, do you know animals talk? And you can hear them. Now, if you can't hear them, you got a problem. Yeah? But if you can hear them, then you can hear all the children crying. Does that make sense? Yeah? But first you have to hear the animals. Yeah? Because they're both in the same boat. There's no difference between the children and the animals. They're both saying the same thing. Yeah. So this invocation is the Om, and it's the purpose of why I do the Om. Why we do Om for meditation, why we do that as a central point, because it's in that process of the Om that helps us come in contact with the process of nature. What's inside of Buddha nature, why I sit and have the Om resonating as a key point of teaching rather than anything else. Yeah, because the Om is inside the earth. The Om literally is the sound of the earth. It's the thing that holds all the trees to be what they are. It's what gives us two hemispheres of our brain. Rather than us being something other than what we are. We are what we are because of the Om. So that's our nature. The Om is our nature. Yeah. So in Om, and this one, the invocate, what is it? I gotta say it again. Yeah, Om, heaven on earth. Yeah. So let's go ahead and start that. And we'll do the invocation. Oh yeah. No echoing. Hey. Great. That's just great. Okay. Just repeat after me. I invoke the power, the love, and the wisdom of my ashram, soul, and monad. To guide me into the right activity in the plan. To clarify and stimulate my mind. To transform and transmute my feelings and emotions. To energize and vitalize and heal my physical and etheric body. So there is a normal flow of energy in my physical and etheric body. through this day and every day. I ask this in the name of the Christ, to serve the One. All in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Take a deep breath.
Close your mind to extraterrestrial. Allow no illusion to steal your soul, to take away your heart. Close your mind. Open your heart. The angel you are is not an extraterrestrial. No one but God leads us along. No one but God tells us the truth. Close your mind to extraterrestrials. Close your mind to illusion and darkness. Close the door of hell. Open your heart to light. In the war, choose your way. The fall of Atlantis. It was our past. The extraterrestrials guided our way. Open the door to the truth and light. Close the door to illusion and lies. God, bring peace to earth, awaken humanity, save them from the forces of astral projection.
Okay, just relax. Hey, open your eyes. So, the process of teaching about bodhisattva, teaching about bodhisattva, or teaching about anything leads to reaction of competition and an emphasis of comparison and other emotional embodiments. Yeah, but the real reality is that the terms bodhisattva, the terms bodhisattva, the terms Buddha comes from the avatar. Yeah, so you have to reconsider, that you're the ones who don't know you reincarnate. Yeah, you're the ones. Yeah, the avatar is the one who does it willingly, knowingly. That's a very different thing, because there's no good outcome in all my incarnations. They're all historically very hard, very devastating, and then I'm killed. So it's not really like, wow, paradise on the next incarnation. It's the bodhisattva reality. You're here to save humanity, not yourself. You're not going back because you're going to have a better life. Going back because you're going to make a difference. Whatever difficulty there is, give it to me. Yeah? That is the attitude you build all the way to your death, rather than, oh, I wish I wasn't here and this is so hard. Because that just definitely doesn't ring with the strength and the courage and the attitude of the avatar. Because the avatar has to be here all the time, every time, and there can't be any of that. Because that holds back the memory and the recapitulation that comes in life. So everybody receives the benefit of the attributes of the avatar, which is constantly reincarnating. So that's why inside of all the animals, inside of humanity, all sentient beings, because of this activity, it is the purpose behind the incarnation, is to instill the light because I'm saving sentient beings that aren't aware that they're sentient beings. And they're not aware that there are other sentient beings everywhere, and we have to behave in a particular way for the reality of sentient being to exist. Because when we don't think in terms of sentient, we don't really understand what sentient is. And it's things that are above lower nature. It's where you find peace. It's where you find, an animal that sniffs on you and becomes your greatest friend. And there's no struggles. It's sentiency. Every relationship, it has the potential of sentiency. And that includes the stones and the rocks and the earth. So all the horrible earth disasters and all the horrible things that we have experienced is our projection that goes into limiting and creates a very strong concrete base for things not to move, for things to stay where they have to reach cleavage, they must explode, they must release. It's a healing crisis, but it's not in a world of sentiency. A world of sentiency doesn't have those processes. We're releasing so often that we start building the body. We're using the Davic field and the elements of the building reality that God uses. So now we're stepping into heaven. That's what that puja is about, is to help us realize that there is a heaven and it is on earth. But at the same time, we have to receive the blessing that comes from the bodhisattva quality, the angel. So there has to be this no separation. When one's an angel, one realizes all the things that I'm saying. Everything I'm saying. And that way there's no, you're raised up, you're sentient. You don't have jealousy or enviousness. You have a completely different experience. The same thing that would be enviousness or jealousy or any of those elemental qualities, they no longer can play out because you're not a diva anymore. Does that make sense? And everybody's a diva. Everybody wants their shit. Everybody wants it their way. That's just their diva. But when we move to sentiency, we get a deva quality. And that way, we literally start making common sense relationships. And we're here for service. And we realize that, other people's lives get better by the actions of our calmness. Just being calm, just being relaxed, literally cuts back people having an unclear mind or an unclear direction or a misunderstanding. Yeah, all that happens from that emotional body that stirs up a lack of sentiency. Yeah, so this puja, this one particular puja, yeah, it focuses on extraterrestrials and the fact that one time, humanity, Earth, had made an agreement with extraterrestrials. Yeah, and they were the League of Fallen Angels, and they are now the people that you call lunar lords. They have a karmic connection to this planet, and they're not really meant to be here. They're lunar. They're not from extraterrestrial realms. Yeah, imagine extraterrestrial, terrestrial. One is Earth, one is outside Earth. Yeah, well, these are terrestrials that present themselves as extraterrestrials, extra super great, super duper dupers, demigods or whatever you want to call them. Whether you look at Egypt or you look at any other place, there are these extraterrestrials. Yeah, they don't have to be from other places, but because of their psychic ability, because of their collective harm and their avarice and those powers, they could do things over material realms that controls those realms and enters in those realms powers that make material forces manifest into a spell or a curse or something that redirects the outcome of the future or the outcome of harmlessness as a way in which we have a culture. So it's all established by this deva quality, whether it be called Caesar or Rome, or they're all just expressions of deva qualities. So that means that we're in hell. Yeah, that what we say, when we say president, when we say this and that, they are things that represent hellness. Yeah, not heaven. Yeah, but we just don't know. We have so much we put emphasis in that we made it into a machine. We made it into our entire belief system. Yeah, when in reality it's all based on these lunar lords, and they run the whole gamut. And yet inside of us is a nature that was with paradise. It was with heaven. It was with the masses of humanity that built these beautiful temples in order to protect ourselves from these demigods. Yeah? So those things are here, and these invocations invoke into those temples to allow ourselves to go into the future, and make choices now that make us not align to lunar lords, because we've made a cursed commitment. We've made an agreement somewhere down the line with these lunar forces and these lunar relationships, whether it be a science, a pseudoscience, a belief system, a culture, whether it be Egypt or Rome, wherever it was. Those were agreements that we put into effect, creating a mass curse on all of us. And they're all about demigods and lunar lords and terrestrials that are extraterrestrials. Yeah. So I recommend doing this puja. Yeah. And because these invocations that do the healing of the times that we're in. We're in the times where all the people, the Hitlers and everybody they come, they go. Well, right now they're in the process of come, go, here they are. Yeah, they're here. They're back. Hitler died not so long ago, which means he's got to come back into a body soon. Well, just exactly what kind of body are we going to be building for him? Because it comes from the body of society. Does that make sense? So if we're going to get a bad Hitler, it's because we haven't evolved. We're still followers of things like that. Yeah. And if we bring our nature into Devic energy, then we dispel the empowerment of a Trump. And we dispel the empowerment of any future lunar lords that can move people in their direction. So industries fall. Yeah. All kinds of glamours fall. All kinds of businesses that were all head by these glamours fall. Everything just begins an illumination of eliminating things that really don't exist, but they exist because of glamours. Yeah, we don't really need them. They only exist because of the glamours. If we had no Kardashians, we probably wouldn't have 9/10 of the TV that we have on TV. We just don't know the power of the devil when it's incarnated in a temptation form. Yeah? And it just goes right over your head because you give it no power other than the fact that, oh, it exists, that goes on. But you should be standing up like an angel and going, this is absolutely uncalled for. And it's bringing about disasters amongst all humanity. Yeah? Those qualities are what awaken inside of people to get rid of the curses. Yeah? So if we see within the next 5 or 6 years, we start seeing, or we see a Kardashian that actually says, I'm no longer a Kardashian. I quit. You know, I am deflating everything. I am going to turn this off. I'm not going to do this anymore. You know, and the guy turns back into a guy. You know, any of that happens, that is the externalization of the left hand. When it begins its turning back into the right, it has to dissolve itself in your presence. Because this is in the material world. This is where this is happening. So the only time that really makes a big effect and changes the world is when it changes while it's alive. Does that make sense? Or it goes to a terrible ending like Michael Jackson. No one would ever want that on anybody. But if he had confessed, if he had turned himself over to the truth, there's a good chance he could have gone through a whole other process. He'd still die. He'd still be who he is. But at least he would have released an enormous amount of evil that's avarice and different types of vices that are still stuck in the earth. Yeah, because we didn't pull it out. We didn't look deep enough because of a second ray. It takes a second ray to dig in and investigate. That's the one who studies, finds the truth. No matter what information is there, look at all the information and it just literally unfolds right before your eyes. That's the second ray. There's no way. The light itself, looking for it, creates the light inside of it to create an attraction for all those things that were manifested in a separate form, hidden, all of a sudden become unhidden, unveiled. Laws change, circumstances change, and it becomes unveiled. But it takes the light of the soul to get that to happen, because everything is subjected to separation and hiding. Yeah, just like in his house or in all these different things, it's all behind the scene. And it only comes out when the light goes in, radiates into it, and dispels the glamours that keeps it from hiding, and it creates a magnetic influence that pulls these things that are hidden in a closet. Someone finds it. Yeah. Hidden in the soul of someone who couldn't say anything, really had to stay behind the scene, and had to say it now. Yeah. And not just one of them, both of them, maybe all three. Yeah. Makes it much more realistic. Yeah. Because it's a matter of getting things to externalize that are hidden. And that's how people don't get caught. Yeah. And that's how evil stays the way it is. Because evil lives longer and has an unjustifiable lifestyle, simply because we do not put the light into it to find the evil that's going on at the time. We don't know about Trump and his activity. Even though we see it, we don't really think we see it. And then now all of a sudden the people that he would be involved with are being caught and grabbed, and other things that he has no way of having control over are all being brought out because of the light. Not because of people want to know that. Because people don't really search it. They are interested, but they're not going to hold for the truth. And the truth is hidden. So it really does require the Devic energy to change the qualities of the psychic influence that people hold into things not manifesting so that we can respond. Because if we don't clean these things up, we're just sitting as inert. Yeah, it's inertia. Yeah, it's not an action. It's inertia. Yeah, so it's a matter of getting out the process of the deva quality, and you got all millions of gazillions of devas out there, but the biggest ones, you have no idea who's who and where they've been and what they're from. Yeah, so clearing that is through these invocations. The invocations are transcendental, yeah, and they have teachings that started way before 1990, way before 1990, and people are just barely catching up to things that I was doing back in 1971, and it doesn't change. The teachings I give, the puja I make, the things that I do stay exactly as they were then, and they can be brought right now, just like this was done in 1995 or 1992 or 1990, and these pujas are relative to the reality of the healing that we're going through with Trump and the situations in the world. And we're going to watch another 40 years go by, and you'll be able to see the unfoldment of the invocations inside the pujas. Yeah? Because I'm the plan. Yeah? Working out the plan. And I've already done it. I've done all the work. Now I'm just in process of making sure no one makes me uncomfortable. Because if I'm made uncomfortable, the light within the plan does not manifest. It only has one source, and I have to keep generating it. That's why the pujas go on 24/7. But it literally is, this physical vehicle has to remain calm. Just calm. That's all. Not asking for much. Just calm. And it is. It's real calm. I got no problems. Everything has been worked out dramatically. So by that, I can see that we are going to have major changes in the entire process of all the things that we're going through. Yeah, and it's all being caused by the reality of that light is pulsing consistently without it going through an erratic process of, this horrible thing or this horrible, all these things that can go on that can change the vibration of harmony. Yeah, that harmonic envelope. Yeah. So enjoy. Yeah. Have a nice night. Thank you very much for attending.